My name is Easter, and I was 29 years old when my perfect engagement party turned into a nightmare. I still remember the happiness in Logan's eyes as he held my hand, until my mother Diana stormed across the room. She demanded I give my $45,000 wedding fund to my sister right then and there. When I refused, she slapped me so hard I spun into the wall. The room went silent as I looked into her eyes and said, "You are about to get a surprise you will never forget." Then my fiancé's father walked in, and my mother turned pale. Let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button while I reveal why my mother turned pale when my future father-in-law walked through that door. To understand why that money meant so much to me, we need to go back 13 years. I was 16 when my father Jonathan was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. He was the kindest man I ever knew, always putting his family first, despite working 2 jobs to keep us comfortable. Dad worked as an accountant during the day and drove for a car service on weekends to save extra money. He always told me, "Easter, I am saving for your special day because I want you to have the wedding of your dreams someday." What I did not know then was that he had been putting aside money every month since I was born. Sometimes it was just $20, other times $100 when he got a bonus. For 29 years, that dedication never wavered. Even when money was tight, my college fund and wedding fund were sacred to him. When doctors gave him only 3 months to live, Dad took me to the bank and showed me the account. $45,000 for when you find the right person, he said with a weak smile. I remember how his hand trembled as he signed the paperwork making me the beneficiary. "Promise me you will use it to celebrate love, just like your mother and I did." He died 6 weeks later, much sooner than the doctors predicted. The pain was unbearable. I lost not just my father but my rock, my guide, the person who understood me completely. My teenage years became a blur of grief counseling, crying myself to sleep, and trying to keep my grades up because that is what Dad would have wanted. Mom seemed devastated too at first. Diana had been married to Dad for 20 years, and they genuinely loved each other despite occasional arguments. But grief affects people differently. While I withdrew into myself, spending hours looking at old family albums, Mom started going out more, saying she needed to feel alive again. Just 11 months after Dad died, she introduced Frank to me. "He makes me happy, Easter," she said when I questioned how quickly she had moved on. "Your father would want me to be happy." Frank was nothing like my father. Where Dad was gentle and thoughtful, Frank was loud and opinionated. He owned a used car dealership and constantly talked about money and status. He had a daughter from his previous marriage named Mia, who was 24 at the time we met. From day one, it was clear Frank favored her over me. When Mom and Frank married just 1 year after Dad died, our once close relationship began to fracture. She changed, becoming more concerned with appearances and material things. Our weekly movie nights stopped. Our heart-to-heart talks disappeared. It felt like she was trying to erase her past life, including the parts that involved me and my dad. Frank moved us into a bigger house in a more expensive neighborhood. He constantly commented on how my moping around brought down the mood. When I mentioned visiting Dad's grave, Mom would get uncomfortable and find excuses not to go. Soon, I stopped asking. Meanwhile, Mia became a fixture in our home. She was pretty, sociable, and knew exactly how to charm Frank into buying her whatever she wanted. A new car for her 25th birthday, designer clothes. A trip to Europe when she graduated. Nothing was too expensive for his real daughter, as I once overheard him say when he thought I was not listening. I had to work through college, taking night shifts at a coffee shop to pay for books and expenses. Mom claimed they could not help because Frank's business was going through a rough patch, but somehow there was always money for Mia's shopping sprees. After graduation, I moved into a small apartment with 2 roommates and got an entry-level job at a marketing firm. I worked hard, earned promotions, and slowly built my career. The wedding fund remained untouched in my account, growing slightly with interest. Sometimes when life felt particularly hard, I would look at the bank statement and feel Dad's presence, almost like he was still watching over me. Mom and I settled into a relationship of obligatory holiday gatherings and brief phone calls. She rarely asked about my life, and when she did, it felt performative. Frank never pretended to care. I became the family outsider, the reminder of Diana's previous life that she seemed eager to forget. Still, I preserved the peace, because that is what Dad would have wanted. I showed up for family events, sent birthday cards, and tried not to let the growing distance break my heart completely. I learned to build a life separate from them, to find joy and purpose without their approval or interest. And for several years, we existed in that delicate balance of strained politeness and emotional distance. Until I met Logan, and everything changed again. I was 27 when I attended a charity auction for a literacy program my marketing firm was supporting. I had been single for almost 2 years after ending a relationship with a guy who turned out to be more interested in what I could do for his career than in me as a person. I was not looking for love that night, just doing my job coordinating with the venue staff and making sure our company's donation was properly acknowledged. Logan was there representing his family's construction business, which had donated materials to build a new community library. He was tall with kind brown eyes and a genuine smile that reached those eyes. When he accidentally bumped into me near the dessert table and apologized by offering me an extra chocolate strawberry, I thought nothing of it beyond appreciating the gesture. Later, when the auction started, we ended up seated at the same table. He asked thoughtful questions about the literacy program, showing genuine interest rather than just making small talk. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged business cards under the pretense of potential collaboration opportunities between our companies. 3 days later, he called my office line. "This is absolutely a professional call about that collaboration," he began, then paused before adding, "But I was wondering if you might want to discuss it over coffee sometime? Or dinner? Or maybe we could skip the pretense and I could just ask you out properly?" His honesty made me laugh, and I agreed to dinner that weekend. We went to a small Italian restaurant where the owner knew him by name. Logan explained that his company had renovated the place after a fire the previous year, and they had become friends. Throughout the evening, I noticed how he treated everyone with respect, from the owner to the busboy. He listened when I spoke, asked follow-up questions, and shared stories about his own life with humor and warmth. One date became 2, then 3, then weekends spent hiking local trails, attending art festivals, and cooking elaborate meals in his apartment. Unlike previous men I had dated, Logan never made me feel like I had to impress him or be someone I was not. When I told him about my father's death and my complicated relationship with my mother and Frank, he listened without judgment. When I cried remembering Dad on his birthday, Logan held me and then suggested we visit the cemetery together so I would not have to go alone. 6 months into our relationship, I took Logan to meet Mom, Frank, and Mia at a restaurant for dinner. Mom was polite but distant, Frank barely acknowledged him, and Mia spent most of the evening talking about herself. Afterward, Logan squeezed my hand and said, "Thank you for sharing your family with me. All aspects of your life matter to me." He never once criticized them, though I knew he had noticed their behavior. In contrast, when I met Logan's parents, William and Patricia, they welcomed me with genuine warmth. William was a successful businessman who had built his construction company from the ground up, while Patricia taught music at an elementary school. Their home was filled with photos of Logan and his younger sister Abby growing up. They asked questions about my work, my interests, and my dreams for the future. Patricia even pulled out old photo albums to show me Logan's childhood pictures, something my own mother had packed away years ago. By our 1-year anniversary, Logan had become my best friend as well as my partner. We talked about everything from our career goals to our favorite ice cream flavors, from politics to whether aliens might exist. We had our disagreements, but we learned to navigate them with respect and compromise. I felt safe with him in a way I had not felt since my father died. When Logan proposed, it happened on a random Tuesday evening. We were making dinner together in my apartment, music playing softly in the background, nothing special planned. Suddenly, he set down the spoon he was using to stir the pasta sauce, took my hands in his, and said, "I was going to plan some elaborate proposal with skywriting or a flash mob, but then I realized that what I love most about us is these ordinary moments that feel extraordinary because we are together. I want a lifetime of cooking dinner with you, Easter. Will you marry me?" He pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple but elegant diamond set in white gold. Later, he told me he had asked Abby to help him choose it rather than his mother because he wanted someone who knew my style. I cried as I said yes, thinking of how proud my father would have been of the man I had chosen. We decided to use my father's wedding fund to have a beautiful ceremony at a local botanical garden, followed by a reception at a historic hotel downtown. Logan's parents insisted on paying for the rehearsal dinner and honeymoon as their gift to us. Every time we discussed wedding plans, I felt both joy about our future and a bittersweet connection to my dad, knowing he had made this possible even in his absence. The engagement party was planned for 6 months before the wedding, hosted at William and Patricia's spacious home. We invited about 50 people, including close friends, co-workers, and family members. Despite my complicated feelings, I sent invitations to Mom, Frank, and Mia, hoping they would behave appropriately for this important occasion. In the weeks leading up to the party, I noticed Mom calling more frequently, asking odd questions about the wedding budget and whether we had considered scaling back the plans. I dismissed it as her typical focus on money, never imagining what she really had in mind. 3 weeks before our engagement party, Mom called and asked me to meet her for lunch, just the two of us. It was unusual enough that I agreed, hoping perhaps she wanted to reconnect before the wedding. We met at a cafe near my office, and for the first 20 minutes, everything seemed normal. She asked about wedding plans, commented on the venue choice, and even brought a bridal magazine she thought I might like. Then, as we were finishing our meals, she set down her fork and said, "Easter, I need to talk to you about Mia. She is in a terrible situation, and I think you are the only one who can help." According to Mom, Mia had met a man named Alan 8 months ago. He was charming, successful, and drove an expensive car. They had a whirlwind romance, and he proposed after just 3 months. Alan claimed to be a venture capitalist with connections to Silicon Valley investors. He told Mia about an exclusive investment opportunity that was guaranteed to double her money in 6 months. Blinded by love and dreams of wealth, Mia had invested her entire savings, about $15,000. She had also maxed out 2 credit cards and taken a personal loan, putting another $30,000 into Alan's business venture. Last week, Alan disappeared. His phone was disconnected, his apartment emptied, and his social media accounts deleted. Mia discovered she was one of several women he had scammed using the same method. "She is devastated, Easter," Mom said, her eyes filling with tears. "She cannot pay her rent, her credit is ruined, and the bank is threatening legal action for the personal loan." I felt bad for Mia, genuinely. Being conned by someone you trusted would be horrible. But I failed to see how this was my problem to solve. When I said as much, Mom's expression hardened. "Frank refuses to help her," she explained. "He says she made her own stupid choices and needs to face the consequences. They had a huge fight about it, and he is punishing her by cutting her off completely." This surprised me. Frank had always indulged Mia's every whim, treating her like a princess who could do no wrong. For him to take such a hard stance suggested either the situation was even worse than Mom was letting on, or there was more to the story. "That is terrible," I said cautiously, "but I am still not sure what you expect me to do." Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Your wedding fund, Easter. You could lend some of it to Mia to help her get back on her feet. Just $20,000 would make all the difference. You and Logan could have a smaller wedding, or wait another year to save up again." I stared at her in disbelief. That money was from Dad. He saved it specifically for my wedding. "Your father would want you to help family," she countered. "Mia is your sister." "Stepsister," I corrected automatically, "and Dad never even met her." Mom's face flushed with anger. "So you would let her life be ruined because of technicalities? What happened to the compassionate daughter I raised?" The conversation deteriorated from there. I explained that the money was already being used for deposits on our venue, catering, and other wedding expenses. Even if I wanted to help, much of it was already committed. Mom accused me of lying, of being selfish, of caring more about one day of playing princess than Mia's entire future. I left the cafe shaken and called Logan immediately. He was outraged on my behalf, but also concerned about the timing. "Do you think this will affect the engagement party?" he asked. I assured him that despite our argument, Mom would never cause a scene at a public event. I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, the pressure intensified. Mom called daily, her tactics shifting between guilt, anger, and manipulation. "If your father could see how selfish you have become, he would be so disappointed," she said during one particularly hurtful call. Mia texted too, long messages about her anxiety, depression, and fear of becoming homeless, always ending with some variation of, "But I understand if you cannot help me. I will find a way somehow." Frank remained conspicuously silent, which I found odd given his usual domineering presence in family matters. When I mentioned this to Mom, she became evasive, saying only that he was dealing with business problems and taking his frustration out on everyone. 3 days before the engagement party, Mom called again. This time her voice was cold and calculating. "We will discuss this further at the party," she said. "I expect you to come prepared with a solution, Easter. Family helps family, and it is time you remembered that." I should have canceled their invitations then. I should have warned Logan and his parents that there might be trouble. I should have done anything except what I did, which was to hope against all evidence that my mother would behave with basic decency on one of the most important days of my life. It was a hope that would prove catastrophically misplaced. The day of our engagement party arrived with perfect spring weather, sunshine streaming through the windows of William and Patricia's beautiful colonial-style home. Logan's sister Abby had decorated the backyard with white and silver balloons, twinkling lights, and flowers in my favorite shades of blue and purple. A professional photographer circulated among the guests, capturing candid moments as people arrived bearing gifts and congratulations. I wore a knee-length white dress with lace details, and my hair styled in loose curls. Logan looked handsome in a navy blazer and gray pants, his eyes bright with happiness as he introduced me to distant relatives and family friends. For the first hour, everything was perfect. We sipped champagne, accepted congratulations, and basked in the love and support surrounding us. William had prepared a touching speech about welcoming me to the family, bringing tears to my eyes when he said, "Some people spend their lives searching for their perfect match. My son found his in Easter, and our family is richer for having her join us." Patricia presented us with a handmade quilt stitched with our initials and wedding date, explaining it was a tradition in her family going back generations. Around 3 in the afternoon, when the party was in full swing, I noticed Mom, Frank, and Mia arrive. They were over an hour late and dressed inappropriately formal for the casual garden party we had specified on the invitations. Mom wore a tight black dress, more suitable for a cocktail party. Frank, a full suit with a flashy gold watch, and Mia, a bright red dress with a plunging neckline. I excused myself from a conversation with Logan's aunt and went to greet them, determined to be polite despite the tension of the past few weeks. "Thank you for coming," I said, giving Mom a brief hug. "There are drinks on the patio and food inside. Let me introduce you to some of Logan's family." Mom barely acknowledged my greeting. Her eyes scanned the crowd, assessing the home, the decorations, the other guests. "Quite the affair," she commented. "Must have cost a pretty penny." I ignored the bait and turned to Mia. "How are you doing? Would you like something to drink?" Before Mia could answer, Frank cut in. "Where's the bar? I need a real drink, not that champagne nonsense." I directed them to the drinks table and quickly rejoined Logan, whispering that my family had arrived and seemed to be in a mood. He squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It will be fine. Just stay close to me." For about 30 minutes, they behaved. Mom chatted stiffly with Patricia about flower arrangements, Frank helped himself to multiple scotches, and Mia flirted with one of Logan's cousins. I began to relax, thinking perhaps I had worried unnecessarily. Then William called for everyone's attention, announcing it was time for Logan and me to share our story and officially announce our wedding date. We stood together under an archway of flowers, Logan's arm around my waist, as he spoke about how we met and his instant attraction to my intelligence and compassion. When it was my turn, I thanked everyone for coming and shared how excited we were to be married in exactly 6 months at the Botanical Gardens. "The gardens my father helped me choose before he passed away," I added, emotion catching in my voice. "He left a special wedding fund to make this day possible, and I know he would have been so happy to see me marrying someone as wonderful as Logan." That was when everything fell apart. Speaking of that wedding fund, Mom's voice rang out loudly from the back of the crowd. Guests parted like the Red Sea as she strode forward, wineglass in hand, eyes blazing with determination. "Easter, we need to talk about that money right now." The crowd went silent. Logan's arm tightened around me protectively. William stepped forward, confusion evident on his face. "Diana, perhaps this is a conversation best had in private?" Mom ignored him completely, her focus laser-sharp on me. $45,000 sitting in your account while your sister faces financial ruin. What kind of person lets family suffer for a party? I felt the blood drain from my face as 50 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. Mom, this is not the time or place. When is the time? She demanded, her voice rising. After Mia is evicted? After her credit is destroyed forever? After she has to drop out of graduate school? Mia stood frozen near the drinks table, her face a mixture of embarrassment and what looked almost like guilt. Frank moved to stand beside Mom, swaying slightly from the alcohol. Diana, let us all calm down. Patricia tried to intervene, her voice gentle but firm. Why do not we go inside and discuss this privately? There is nothing to discuss, Mom snapped. Easter needs to give Mia the money her father left. Jonathan would have wanted to help all his daughters. Mia was not his daughter, I said quietly, finding my voice at last, and that money was specifically saved for my wedding. Dad worked extra shifts for years to create that fund. Mom's face contorted with rage. You selfish, ungrateful girl, after everything we have done for you. Logan stepped slightly in front of me. Mrs. Harris, I think you have had too much to drink. Let us take a break and discuss this another time. That was when Mom completely lost control. She thrust her wine glass at a nearby guest and marched up to me, getting so close I could smell the alcohol on her breath. Give your sister your wedding fund right now, or this engagement is off. No daughter of mine will be this heartless. I am not giving Mia my wedding fund, I stated firmly, my whole body shaking with adrenaline. And you cannot end my engagement. I am 29 years old, not a child you can control. The slap came out of nowhere, her open palm connecting with my cheek with such force that I spun sideways and crashed into the wall behind me. The pain was sharp and immediate, but the humiliation burned hotter. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Someone, probably Abby, screamed. Logan lunged forward, but I held up my hand to stop him. Slowly, I straightened myself, touching my stinging cheek where I could already feel a bruise forming. I looked directly into my mother's eyes, seeing not the woman who had once tucked me into bed and kissed my scraped knees, but a stranger consumed by greed and bitterness. You are about to get a surprise you will never forget, I said, my voice low and steady despite my racing heart. At that exact moment, the patio doors opened, and William walked in from where he had stepped out moments before. He took in the scene, his experienced eyes immediately understanding something had happened. He walked directly toward us, his posture straight and authoritative. And that was when I saw it, the moment my mother truly saw him for the first time that day. Her face drained of all color, her eyes widened in unmistakable recognition and fear, and she took an instinctive step backward. It was as if she had seen a ghost from a past she had desperately tried to bury. Diana? William said, his voice carrying a weight I did not understand. It has been a long time. William stepped into the circle that had formed around us, his presence commanding the room without him raising his voice. My mother stood frozen, her hand that had just slapped me now pressed against her own mouth. William, she finally whispered. I did not know. I never realized. Logan looked between them, confusion evident on his face. Dad? You know Easter's mother? William nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving my mother's face. Diana worked for my first company about 15 years ago, before I started the construction business. Isn't that right, Diana? The tension in the air was palpable as guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, sensing they were witnessing something deeply personal and unexpected. It was a long time ago, Mom stammered, looking desperately toward the exit. Frank moved closer to her, his expression darkening as he sensed something was very wrong. What is going on? He demanded. Diana, how do you know this man? William turned to address the confused guests. I apologize for this disruption to our celebration. Perhaps we could give the family some privacy? Patricia, would you mind taking our guests to the garden for a while? Patricia, ever gracious, quickly ushered the shocked onlookers outside, leaving only Logan, me, William, my mother, Frank, and Mia in the living room. As soon as the last guest left, William gestured toward the sofa. Please, sit down. I think we have some history to discuss. My mother remained standing, her body rigid with what I now recognized as fear. There is nothing to discuss. We should leave. Come on, Frank. Actually, William said, his voice gentle but firm, I think your daughter deserves to know why you turned white as a sheet when you saw me. especially after what just happened. Frank's confusion was turning to anger. Diana, what the hell is he talking about? William sighed heavily and turned to me. Easter, I recognized your mother's name when Logan first mentioned it months ago. I did some research to confirm it was the same Diana Harris who once worked for me. I debated whether to tell you, but I did not want to cast a shadow over your happiness. I plan to speak with her privately after today. Speak with me about what? Mom's voice had taken on a shrill quality I had never heard before. William's expression hardened slightly. About the $120,000 you embezzled from my company before disappearing without a trace. About the innocent colleague you framed for your crime, who spent 6 months in jail before evidence cleared him. The room went completely silent. I felt Logan's arm around my shoulders, steadying me as my knees threatened to buckle. Frank stared at my mother with dawning horror. That is not true, Mom protested weakly. It was a misunderstanding. The accounting system was flawed. I have all the documentation, William replied calmly. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, falsified records. Your resignation letter submitted the day before the annual audit. The police never found you because you changed your last name from Thompson to Harris when you married Easter's father. I felt like I had been slapped again, harder this time. You were married before, Dad? You told me he was your first husband. Mom would not meet my eyes. Frank took a step away from her, his face contorted with betrayal. 15 years ago? We have only been married for 12 years. You were still married to Jonathan then. It was complicated, she whispered. William continued, his voice steady. The statute of limitations on financial crimes like these is typically 5 to 10 years, depending on the jurisdiction. But fraud that crosses state lines, as yours did when you moved the money through banks in 3 different states, falls under federal jurisdiction with different limitations. Are you threatening me? Mom finally found her voice, anger replacing fear. I am explaining reality, William countered. I never pursued charges back then because my company survived, and I felt partly responsible for not having better oversight. The colleague you framed was eventually cleared and compensated. But seeing you here today, watching you assault your daughter and demand she give up her inheritance to solve whatever new financial mess you have created, makes me question that decision. Mia, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Is that why you have been so desperate for Easter's money? Because you have done this before? You told me Easter was being selfish, that she had plenty of money while I was suffering. Her voice broke on the last word. Mia, honey, it is not like that. Mom tried to reach for her, but Mia stepped away. Did you know about Alan? Mia demanded. Did you know he was a con man before you encouraged me to invest with him? A new, terrible suspicion dawned on me. Mom, did you introduce Mia to Alan? The guilty flash in my mother's eyes told me everything I needed to know. Frank saw it too. Jesus Christ, Diana, he exploded. Did you set your own daughter up with a scammer to create a crisis so you could get Easter's money? What kind of monster are you? I did not know he would take everything, Mom protested. He was just supposed to take a small investment, enough to create a need for Easter's help. He went off script. Mia made a sound like a wounded animal and sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. I moved to sit beside her, instinctively wanting to comfort her despite our complicated history. William watched this unfold with a grim expression. There is more, I am afraid. Easter, after Logan told me about your father's death, I had my private investigator look into some financial matters. The life insurance policy your father had should have paid out $400,000, not just the $45,000 wedding fund you received. My head snapped up. What? Dad's policy was small, just enough to cover funeral expenses and the wedding fund. Mom told me so. Your father increased his coverage significantly the year before his diagnosis, William explained gently. The records show the full amount was paid to Diana as the primary beneficiary. The $45,000 was a separate account in your name that she could not access. The room spun around me as the implications sank in. All these years of struggling through college, working multiple jobs, sharing cramped apartments with strangers while Mom and Frank lived in their large house with luxury cars in the driveway. All those times she claimed they could not help me financially. You stole my inheritance, I whispered, looking at the woman who had given birth to me, but now seemed like a complete stranger. Dad wanted to provide for me, and you took it all. I was a widow with bills to pay, she shouted defensively. That money ensured we did not lose everything. You mean it ensured you could attract Frank with your apparent wealth? I corrected bitterly. And fund Mia's extravagant lifestyle while I worked nights to pay for textbooks. Frank looked physically ill. The down payment on our house, the investments you said were from your family money, all of it was stolen? First from this man's company, then from your own daughter? Frank, please. Mom reached for his arm, but he jerked away. I want a divorce, he said flatly, and I will make damn sure the court knows exactly what kind of person you are. William cleared his throat. Easter, I would be happy to connect you with my lawyers to explore recovering what rightfully belongs to you. The statute of limitations has not expired on insurance fraud, particularly when it involves inheritance intended for a minor. Logan, who had been silently supporting me throughout this revelation, finally spoke. Easter, whatever you want to do, I am with you. If you want to pursue this legally, or if you would rather just move forward with our lives, I will support your decision completely. I looked around the room at the wreckage of what should have been a joyful celebration. My mother, exposed as a thief and manipulator. Frank, realizing his entire marriage was built on lies. Mia, a victim of her mother's schemes, just as much as I had been, albeit in different ways. I need some time to think, I said finally, my voice steadier than I expected. But I know one thing for certain. You are not welcome at my wedding, Mom, not after this. The days following our disastrous engagement party passed in a blur of phone calls, meetings, and emotional conversations. Logan and I retreated to his apartment that night, where I alternated between stunned silence and bouts of uncontrollable tears. He held me through it all, never pushing me to talk until I was ready, never suggesting I should just move on or forgive for the sake of peace. I feel like my entire childhood was a lie, I told him as we sat on his balcony the next morning, watching the sunrise with untouched coffee growing cold in our hands. Every memory I have of Mom is tainted now. Was she always planning her next scheme? Was she stealing from Dad all those years they were married? Logan did not offer empty platitudes or try to find a silver lining. Instead, he simply acknowledged the depth of the betrayal. What she did was unforgivable. You have every right to feel however you feel about it. William called later that day to check on me and formally apologize for his role in the revelations. I should have found a better way to address this, he said. I never intended for it all to come out so publicly. You have nothing to apologize for, I assured him. If anything, I am grateful you exposed the truth. I might have given in to her demands otherwise, never knowing she already stole hundreds of thousands from me. He offered again to connect me with his attorneys, and after discussing it with Logan, I agreed. The process would be lengthy and potentially painful, but recovering even part of what my father had intended for me felt like honoring his memory. William's lawyers were confident they could build a strong case for insurance fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Frank called next, sounding older and more defeated than I had ever heard him. I am leaving her, he said without preamble. I have already moved into a hotel and contacted a divorce attorney. I need you to know I had no idea about any of this, Easter. I was an arrogant jerk to you over the years, and I am sorry for that, but I swear I did not know she had stolen your inheritance. I believed him, strangely enough. Frank had many flaws, but elaborate deception did not seem to be among them. He was too straightforward in his selfishness for that kind of long con. What will you do now? I asked, not out of concern for him, but curious about how someone rebuilds after discovering such betrayal. Start over, I guess. The car dealership is in my name, so at least I have that. I am helping Mia with her debts. It is the least I can do after ignoring the red flags for so long. The mention of Mia prompted me to reach out to her directly. We met at a quiet cafe, both of us looking exhausted and shell-shocked. For the first time since our parents married, we spoke honestly with each other, without the competitive dynamic Mom had always encouraged between us. I really was scammed by Alan, she clarified immediately. Mom introduced us at a charity event, said he was the son of her college roommate. She encouraged the relationship, kept saying what a good match we were, how smart I was to date someone with such good business sense. She set you up, I said, not a question but a confirmation. Mia nodded, tears filling her eyes. When I lost everything, she seemed almost pleased. She kept saying not to worry, that we would figure it out, that you had plenty of money you could share. I feel so stupid now. We were both manipulated, I told her. For years, she played us against each other. I always thought you were the favorite, the one who got everything while I struggled. And I thought you were the one she really loved, her actual daughter, Mia countered. She would criticize me when you were not around, say I needed to be more serious and accomplished like you. Nothing I did was ever enough. We talked for hours, piecing together different versions of the same manipulative woman who had shaped both our lives. By the end, I felt something I never expected toward Mia, a sense of kinship forged through shared trauma. "What will you do about the money?" she asked as we prepared to leave. "Will you try to get it back from her?" "I am working with William's lawyers," I explained. "But regardless of what happens with that, I want you to know I do not blame you for any of this. You were as much a victim as I was." "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." The most difficult conversation came 3 days later, when Mom showed up unannounced at my apartment. I almost did not answer the door, but some part of me needed closure, needed to hear whatever explanation she might offer. She looked smaller somehow, her carefully maintained appearance showing signs of neglect. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes puffy from crying or lack of sleep or both. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual confident edge. I let her in but remained standing, unwilling to settle into what might become a lengthy conversation. "Say what you came to say, Mom." "I know you hate me right now," she began, wringing her hands. "You have every right to, but you have to understand. I was desperate back then. Desperate enough to steal from your own child? From the man who loved you?" She sank onto my couch, uninvited. "Your father was a wonderful man, but he was also naive about money. We were deeper in debt than you ever knew. Medical bills, the mortgage, credit cards. When he got sick, I panicked. So you took my inheritance to solve problems you created," I said flatly, and then lied about it for 13 years. "I meant to pay you back," she insisted. "But then there were other expenses, and Frank had expectations about our lifestyle, and it just became easier to pretend that money never existed." I shook my head in disbelief. "What about William's company? Was that desperation too?" She looked away. "That was different. I saw an opportunity and I took it. I was good at moving money around, making numbers work in my favor. When the audit was coming, I knew I needed to create a distraction, so I planted evidence pointing to my colleague. An innocent person went to jail, Mom. Only for a few months," she said, as if that somehow mitigated the crime. "And I did not think they would actually arrest him. I just needed time to disappear." Her casual dismissal of the harm she had caused solidified something in me. This woman sitting before me was not capable of the kind of empathy and remorse that might someday lead to reconciliation. "I am pursuing legal action to recover my inheritance," I told her, watching her face fall. "William's lawyers believe we have a strong case, especially since you committed fraud by hiding the policy's true value." "You would sue your own mother? After everything I have sacrificed for you?" The familiar, manipulative tone crept back into her voice. "What exactly did you sacrifice, Mom?" "You stole from me. You lied to me my entire adult life. You tried to manipulate me into giving my wedding fund to Mia as part of some convoluted scheme. And when that did not work, you physically assaulted me in front of my fiancé's entire family." She had no answer for that. Just tears that I could no longer trust were genuine. After a few moments of silence, I walked to the door and opened it. "I need you to leave now. My lawyers will be in touch. I do not want any contact from you unless it is through them." She paused at the doorway, looking back with an expression I could not quite read. "He would be proud of you, you know. Jonathan, you have his backbone." It was the most honest thing she had said in years, and it broke something open inside me. But I did not respond, just closed the door gently and then sank to the floor, allowing myself to fully feel the grief of losing not just the mother I had, but the mother I had always wanted her to be. The 6 months between our engagement party disaster and our wedding day were some of the most challenging and transformative of my life. I began seeing a therapist specializing in family trauma, trying to untangle the complex web of emotions surrounding my mother's betrayal. Some days I made progress, finding moments of peace and clarity. Other days, rage and grief overwhelmed me, leaving me wondering if I would ever truly heal. Logan was my rock through it all. He never complained when I woke him at 3 in the morning, thoughts racing too fast for sleep. He accompanied me to meetings with the lawyers, taking detailed notes when my emotions made it difficult to focus. He rearranged our wedding plans when necessary, shouldering burdens without being asked. "You do not have to be strong all the time," he reminded me one evening when I apologized for another crying episode. "That is what partnership means. I carry you when you need it, and you will carry me someday when I need it." William and Patricia became the parental figures I had been missing for so long. They invited me for family dinners, included me in holiday plans, and treated me with a warmth and respect that sometimes brought tears to my eyes. William checked in regularly on the legal proceedings without pressure, making it clear that his support was unconditional regardless of the outcome. The lawsuit against my mother progressed slowly but steadily. Her initial defiance crumbled when faced with the mountain of evidence William's investigators had gathered. Bank records showing the insurance payout, documentation of large cash withdrawals, suspicious transfers to accounts in Frank's name. The paper trail was damning and comprehensive. 3 months before the wedding, we reached a settlement. Mom would repay $200,000, slightly more than half of what she had taken. The amount was less than I deserved, but the lawyers advised that a protracted court battle might yield even less, and would certainly cost more in legal fees and emotional toll. I accepted the terms, wanting to close this chapter before starting my new life with Logan. Mia and I continued our tentative steps toward an actual sisterly relationship. She moved into a smaller apartment, found a job at a marketing firm similar to mine, and began the slow process of rebuilding her credit and her life. We met for coffee every few weeks, sometimes talking about the past, sometimes focusing on the future. She asked if she could attend the wedding, and after some thought, I agreed, though I made it clear Mom was still not welcome. "She is in therapy too," Mia told me during one of our meetings. "Some kind of program for compulsive gambling. Apparently that was behind a lot of the financial problems." "I hope it helps her," I said, surprised to find I meant it. I did not want reconciliation, but I did not wish for her continued destruction either. Is she still contesting the divorce? No, she finally signed the papers. Frank gave her a small settlement in exchange for a clean break. She is living in an apartment across town, working as an office manager. It was strange to imagine my mother, once so focused on status and appearances, living such a scaled-back life. But perhaps it would finally teach her the values my father had tried to instill in our family, the understanding that relationships matter more than possessions. As our wedding approached, I used part of the settlement money to create a small memorial to my father at our ceremony. A special chair in the front row, left empty but adorned with his favorite flowers. A locket with his picture attached to my bouquet. A moment of silence in the ceremony to honor his memory and the gift he had given us through his foresight and love. The day itself was everything I had dreamed of, made all the more meaningful by the journey that preceded it. The botanical garden burst with springtime blooms, the weather perfect for our outdoor ceremony. I walked down the aisle alone, my decision a statement of independence rather than loss. Logan waited beneath an arch of blue hydrangeas and white roses, tears in his eyes as he saw me approach. Our vows were personal and heartfelt, mine including a promise to build the kind of honest, supportive family we both deserved. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the applause from our guests felt like a collective affirmation that love could triumph over betrayal. At the reception, William gave a toast that acknowledged the difficult path we had traveled. "Life rarely gives us perfect stories with happy beginnings, middles, and ends," he said, raising his glass. "Instead, it gives us challenges that reveal our true character." Easter and Logan have faced such challenges with grace, courage, and unwavering commitment to each other. Their marriage begins not with naive optimism, but with tested strength. Mia approached me during the dancing, looking nervous but determined. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a small gift bag. Inside was a delicate silver frame containing a photo I had never seen before, my father holding me as a baby, his face alight with love and pride. "I found it in a box of Mom's things when I was helping her move," Mia explained. "I thought you should have it." I hugged her tightly, this unexpected sister who had emerged from the wreckage of our family's secrets. "Thank you. This means everything." 6 months after the wedding, Logan and I used the remaining settlement money to make a down payment on our first home, a cozy 3-bedroom house with a yard big enough for the family we hoped to build. As we unpacked boxes in our new kitchen, I found the frame Mia had given me and placed it on a shelf where I would see it every day. "Your dad would be proud," Logan said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Of all you have overcome, of the person you have become despite everything." "I hope so," I whispered, leaning into his embrace. "I hope he knows his gift went beyond the money. He taught me about integrity, about standing up for myself, about recognizing real love when it appears." 3 weeks ago, I discovered I was pregnant with our first child. When the doctor confirmed the news, my first thought was how my father would never know his grandchild. My second thought was the absolute certainty that I would break the cycle of deception and manipulation that had poisoned my family for so long. Sometimes, the family we build becomes more precious than the one we are born into. My father's legacy was not just the money he left behind, but teaching me my own worth. And that is a wedding gift that will last a lifetime. If you have ever had to stand your ground against family pressure or discovered painful truths about someone you trusted, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. How did you find the strength to move forward? What helped you heal? Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that even the most painful beginnings can lead to beautiful new chapters.